Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat, with another Python programming lesson. And this time we're going to look at CSV files and multi-dimensional arrays. So this is going to be quite an interesting little lesson, this one. All right, so in the challenge task, let's jump to the challenge task first. We're going to have this quote of the day, and we've just chosen it to be from one of our favorite rappers. So do you need an inspirational quote? So we can have MMN, Kane, or Jay-Z. So we've picked Kanye there, and I was never really good at anything except for the ability to learn. Yeah, that's a cool quote. And here's another one here where we just decided we go with Jay-Z, and they talk, we live. Who cares what they say? And that is really good advice as well. So yeah, I really like some of these rapper quotes. So we just use them for this project, and that's what we're building up to make this inspirational quote of the day project. But before we do that, we're going to do a different project. So for the actual learning task for this lesson, we're going to build a grocery price check or a price list type program. It's going to read in a CSV file, which is a new type of file we haven't looked at before, and we're going to process that using arrays in Python, which we have looked at before in previous lessons. So remember, I'm a bit of a slow talker, so use that tools cog to adjust the video speed to 1.5 or even 1.75. And the other thing is, it's really important you've done our previous lessons. All right, on the Passy's World of ICT website, go to the Python, okay, Python tab, and it's got all of our previous lessons here. Now they're taking a little while to come in here. Oh my goodness, they're taking a while. All right, so we had the, first we did turtle graphics just to learn the basics of the language, and that was a lot of fun. And then we started off with the number guess game. Now this one, arrays and lists. This one, which had the pets in the houses, that's a really important thing. So you need to do that so you know something about arrays. You need to have done dice rolling to know about random numbers, because we're going to use that. And the other really important one is the homework excuser, because that's where we first learned how to read a file and how to pick something at random out of the file, like we're doing with those quote of the days. All right, so you must have done the homework excuser and you must have done the arrays lesson. Okay, so what we're going to have is an input CSV file, and what that means is we've got items here like these are all supermarket grocery items, then we have a comma to separate, and then we put what the price of each item is, then we have another comma to separate, and we've got what sort of department or what category it's in, whether it's vegetables, meat, or dairy product. So this is just a tiny little cut down list just so we can test our program with. Obviously, with a real program, you would be using a lot more than this. And the idea is that we'll have this price checker, so it'll ask you, do you need to do a price check? Yes. And you can pick vegetables, dairy, or meat by typing the first letter. Here they've chosen M for meat. And what it does is it lists out all the meat that they've got in the supermarket and shows you the prices. So instead of having to look at a really big long list, you only have to look at the meat, and you can find out sausage 6-pack. Oh, that's $4.50. Now you could do another one here. You want to do another price check. This time you're looking at vegetables, and we've just got a couple in our examples there. So it only lists out those items and their price. And finally, and thirdly, we did dairy products, and we had 3 of those and listed them out. So that's the one we're going to build together and learn what a CSV file is, how to read it into not just a normal array, but a multi-dimensional array, a 2-dimensional array, and then how to get it out, printed out on the screen by Python. All right, so let's look at what CSV files are. So as we spoke, here's a CSV file with 3 items in it, the price and the department or category that item is in. All right, so we just separate the different components using commas. It's CSV stands for comma separated values. Okay, now this has 3 records. We've got the carrots one, we've got the one for the lamb roast, and the one for the large carton of milk. So each row here, each full line is called a record, but each of these sub-items, such as the price of something or what category it's in, that's called a field. So each record, like this large milk carton, has actually 1, 2, 3 fields in it. The description, the price, and the category that it's in. All right, so Python will read this into an array, because it's no use having it out in the external file. Like we saw in the homework excuser program, you've got to get it read into an array in program memory. Now, how it does it is it does a big array with these, if you can see these pink brackets here, which is kind of the records. There's 1, 2, 3 records in the big array, and then it sets up a little array inside each record so that we can see each of the separate fields that are in the record, okay? So there's 2 dimensions. There's kind of the row, the record, and then there's the columns, which is what the item is, the description, the price, and the category, all right? So that's what we're going to be working on, 2-dimensional arrays, and we'll work out how to do some Python coding to process this, which has been put into memory, and to get it printed out onto the screen. All right, so we need to have a loop to step through the array, but it has to kind of step through the records and the fields as well. So it's a little bit more complicated than things were in the homework excuser program. So the CSV file has horizontal rows. So each of these rows here, we've highlighted them, is a record. So this is called a record. So there's 3 rows in this file, or 3 records, okay? And that's the idea of that. The record level is the full row with all of the comma separated values for that particular item in it. But inside each particular record item, we've also got these sub values. We've got the what the description is, the price, and the category. So these 3 are called fields. All right, so inside we've got these separated by commas. They're called fields. So here we've got the whole record for a large carton of milk, but then inside that record we've got the description, the price, and what category the large carton of milk is. And those 3 items are called fields. All right, so think of it like this. Often we have things split up. So you've got your name, your full name. So your full name is like the record, and we can split your record up into your first name and your last name, and they're the 2 fields which make up your record. So fields are kind of little component values which contribute to making up the whole record, just like your first name and last name contributes to making up your whole name, is one way to think about it. Now, for creating and editing CSV files, you notice that they end in .csv. And when you look at them in normal Windows Explorer, they'll actually come up with an Excel symbol that you need to open and manipulate them with Excel, but that is not actually the best way to do it. You need to use Windows Notepad instead. So Windows Notepad is far better for creating and editing your CSV files. With Excel, it's great for looking at them, but if you try and edit and save them, you can run into all sorts of problems. All right, so how you do that, it's showing in Excel. So if you double click on that, it's going to open it up in Excel, but we want it open in Notepad. So you need to get on the file in Windows Explorer and then right click while you're on that file with it highlighted and go open with Notepad and choose the Notepad app instead. So that's very important that you edit them in Notepad. And then what will happen is your file, your .csv file, will not open in Excel. It'll open up in Notepad, which is like a word processor where you can just move around and type things and press enter to go to a new line. All right. And it's very important you don't have blank lines at the bottom of a CSV file. Make sure your cursor stops at the very last item in it and you don't press enter and go to the blank line, because that can make blank rows in an array later on and cause some problems. All right, now to create a brand new CSV file, you start Windows Notepad up. So just go to the Start button at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen in Windows 10 like you would for any program, and start typing NOTE, and you should see pretty soon that Notepad will show up. And so double click that and that will launch Notepad. All right, Notepad will be like this with a blank screen and a area here. We've just shrunk it down smaller to fit on the slide, but an area here where you can type things in, just like typing into Microsoft Word or a word processor or any text editor. And what you can do is you can type all of your items in and just press enter at the end of each line. But remember, on that last line, just make sure your cursor where you finish typing is just at the end of that item, and you don't press enter and make any more blank lines in the file. Then to save it, all you have to do is go File, with the Notepad, File Save As, just like you would with a Word or an Excel or any other document. But when you name it, Notepad will want to name it as text.txt, which was fine when we did the homework excuses program, the previous lesson, but in this lesson we want it to be a CSV file. So you have to deliberately type .csv on the end. That's very important, and set the type to all files. So you need to use that down arrow to change it from text to all files. So it's got to be .csv and it's got to be all files, and then you do your save, and then you'll have your CSV file set up. And of course, just like we did in the homework excuser, that file that you set up has to be in the same folder that your program is in. All right, they've got to be in the same Windows Explorer folders. Now, once you've got that CSV file, it's very easy to add in extra records or delete records out. So the great thing about having a CSV file is we don't need a programmer to maintain the file. So we've started out with our little grocery items file like this. Now if we need a whole lot more grocery items added into it, we don't need to have a programmer do that. Any person that can open a document and type can do it. So we can just have a normal member of staff or anyone just add in these extra items and keep adding them in. We don't need a programmer or anyone with any special skills in particular to do that. So you just type in the items just like you would in Microsoft Word or any sort of editor. Just make sure you don't go at the end and make blank lines, that your cursor finishes at the very last item in the file, and you will be right as rain. Now the file can be opened in Excel, and in Excel it's great for viewing because it puts it all into columns just like a spreadsheet. But the big problem is when you try and save it, Excel wants to save it as an Excel spreadsheet. You have to go through a few special steps to save it as a CSV file, so you might accidentally ruin your file by trying to edit and save it in Excel. But by all means browse it and then just close Excel without saving the file and you'll be okay. But I think in the Notepad it's pretty easy to read here where the items are, especially if you make some extra spaces here for category, which we still need to do on that one by the looks of it. All right, so that is all about the input file, a comma separated values file. Now we need to look at when Python reads that file, how's it going to read it and how's it going to put it into memory in an array that's going to be a special array because it's not only going to take care of each line in the file, each record, but we also need to take care of the items inside each record, because remember each record has a description, a price and a category. So how's that all going to work in Python? Well, it kind of makes two arrays, an outer array and an inner array. So let's look at this outer array, which just functions at line or row or record level. All right, so Python will put these records, these groups of 3 items that are colored in here, that one, and that one, into an array, which is the kind of outside or the big array that everything's in. So if we want all 3 items here for the carrots, that's outer array bracket 0, and that's record 1 in the file. Remember, the computer starts numbering at 0. If we want all 3 of those, that row or that line or that record from the file, that's outer array brackets 1 is where that's going to go. This is going to get loaded into outer array brackets 2 and so on. So that's kind of the record group or rows or lines in your file. That's kind of that level of storage in the program. And we've seen that before in previous programs, and that's what we're used to. Now we're going to look at the second dimension where we make an array inside an array, and that's the new bit we haven't done. So this bit should make sense that we've just got one line in the file. This was the first line that was typed in. Python reads that whole line just like it read a whole homework excuse in the homework excuser, and it puts that into a record. So if we want all of this first line, we just go outer array bracket 0 and that will give it to us. All right, now we have to have an inside array as well, so we can keep track of the individual items for each record, where these individual items are the details, and they're called fields. So this one is inner 0, this one we're just calling inner 1, this one's called inner 2, but in the Python program it may have different names. So inside each of those outer array records, we've got our 3 fields in an inner array. Okay, so there's record 1, outer array bracket 0, but inside that record, there are actually 3 items. And so we've got the inner 0, the inner 1, and the inner 2, where inner 0 is the description, inner 1's the price, and inner 2 is the category. And we've got that for all 3 records. So we've kind of got these big record level thing happening where we get all 3 values in one line of the file, but then inside each of those we have 3 sort of sub items called the inner items. The second dimension of the array is what that's called. So Python processing needs a loop to read each of these records one at a time, and as we read each one we can look then at the inner values inside each record, and that's what we're going to look at next, how you do the 2 dimensioning. Okay, so here we go. This is what we've got. We've got the big array here, this pink one, and inside that you've got record 0, record 1, and record 2. okay, outer array 2, 1 and 0. Then inside we've got the inner array values. So how you do that in Python is you say for I in range 0 to the length of the input item, so we're just calling this big whole array here, not outer array, but we're calling it input items. We probably should have typed input items there, but anyway, they're the items, 3 of them. And then what we do is we want to print for each, when we're on this record, we then want to print that record's inner 0, that record's inner 1, and that record's inner 2. So we have to specify 2 items in the array here, what I number, what record we're on, and also this one, these numbers here, 0, 1, and 2, they're the inner array values so that we get these 3 things printed out from the record. So you need to think of a 2-dimensional array like this, that we've got 9 locations in memory basically, and this one where caret's packet is stored is actually kind of record 0 and field 0. So that's kind of at 0, 0. That's what you would use in the double brackets if you want to get this item. Now this $2.75 is actually in outer array 0, record 1, but it's inner number 1. So that's at 0, 1. And this one here is in record number 0 here, but its item is number is 2, so that's at 0, 2. So you kind of need to get this in your head, this kind of pattern of how we reference in 2 dimensions. We reference what record we're on first. So here, for example, we're on record 2, and that $25 is at kind of index number 1 in there. So we're at outer array 1, okay, and we're at index 1. So this one here would be at 1, 1 if you wanted to print it out directly from Python. This dairy item here is in outer array 2, it's kind of the big record number 2 in Python's numbering, but the dairy is kind of the inside number 2. So that would be at big record 2, and we want to go inside to position 2 to get that, all right? So if you can get that pattern in your head and worked out, you'll be okay. That's kind of the new learning in this lesson. So for each loop, we just go, here we're on record 1, I, and we need to get I0, I1, and I2. So that's exactly what we're printing out here. And we've called the big array not outer array, but we've called it input items for the name of this whole set of 9 boxes here, which is our particular records we had coming in from that file that have gone into the input items array. All right, so when you run that program, what'll happen is it's going to actually print out the contents of the records neatly so we can read them all on the screen. Okay, so there'll be more about this in the PDF step-by-step instructions when we build the price checker program, but that's how the 2-dimensional arrays works. Okay, that's the hardest concept to get in this lesson. And that's kind of, that slide there actually summarizes all of the new learning we're doing in this lesson. So the challenge task, which we did see at the start, what's going to happen there is you'll have a 2-dimensional array. We've got all these quotes here, then we've got comma and who the author is for each one. M&M got pushed over there a bit. We'll have to fix that up. And you'll need to make that input file or get our file from the downloads if you're happy using the wrappers. Now, you don't have to use wrappers. If you like quotes from Greek philosophers like Seneca and Aristotle and Plato, you can use those. If you like quotes from, I don't know, American presidents or something, you can get that one. Whatever you like, you just need quotes and who the author was, okay? And maybe just have 3 authors or 4 authors to keep it pretty simple in the program, because they're going to pick the letter of the author, and that's just a shortcut to make data entry quicker for them. And then it's going to find at random, so here we picked M&M. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, M&M quotes. So we're going to use random numbers. So it randomly picks one of those 5. And we got this one. Backstabbers are only powerful when you got your back turned. So don't turn your back. I love those wrapper quotes. They're so good. So I think we need to jump across to the PDF step-by-step instructions document now and actually start on the lesson. All right, so these step-by-step instructions you can get with the downloads for the lesson. We recommend that you click in the video description, find out where those downloads are and get those downloads. So this is all the work we've just been through, having a look at the 2 projects, the price checker first, and then we're going to have the famous quotes coming as our challenge task. This is all about the CSV file structure we were just talking about and how you can read that into Python arrays and how you need to make a 2-dimensional array to be able to access every single single item separately, which is in that input file, which we've now read into this array in program memory. So the price checker program, as usual, we're using Agile, so we're going to have versions, and I think we have 4 or 5 versions till we got the thing finished. So version 1 is setting up for repeated runs of the main process. Now this is the same as the homework excuses. Remember how they could keep, do you want another excuse? Yes. Do you want another excuse? Yes. And it would keep giving them to them. So this is just setting up so that they can get more price checks if they want to. So that should be all familiar and should make sense. And you just need to get that typed in. You could even probably maybe copy things from the homework excuser program into here and just edit them to fix up with the groceries pricing. And when you run that, what should happen is here, let's try and get a bit of magnifying happening on that. Okay, so what should happen there is you just should get the introduction. Do you need a price check? And the processing's not written yet. That's what we're having it print out. Print out processing not written yet. So that's all fine. That straight up and down line there is just a cursor, where the cursor was in the program, so don't worry too much about that. That was a bit of a mistake having that in there. And then we get on to version 2. Now version 2 is where we're going to read that input CSV file and get it loaded into this Python array we spoke about. All right, so you'll need your input CSV file set up, even if you just got these 3 records to start off with. So either get our one from the downloads or just make your own one with Notepad. And like with the homework excuser, the first thing you have to do is make sure the file exists and it's sitting there in the same folder as your program is located. So we're just adding on to version 1 code here. So you get your version 1 code and start adding in this stuff for version 2. So in this spot in the version 1 program, we're saying read CSV file into array. What you need for that is the first thing we're doing is that try except finally code. Now, we're not going to go through that because we went through that in the homework excuser program, but that just checks that this supermarket underscore items.csv file is actually present in the same folder as your program, and if it's not, it's going to print there was a file not found problem and it can't run the program. All right, so when we run that, what happens is we get our debug print, the value of file found is true. Okay, so it did find the file. Okay, do you need now debug print, the value of file found is true. Now if we change the CSV file in the code, change it to some name which we can guarantee the program won't find, we should get the error message, grocery item CSV file not found, cannot run program, press enter to exit. Okay, so that was all learning we did in the homework excuser. If that's not making any sense, make sure you've gone back and done the homework excuser lesson. Now also make sure the supermarket items file, just add in those extra things. So you've got tasty cheese and spinach and all those things as well. So all of these records. So that's a good little practice on editing the file, and make sure editing the file in Notepad, make sure it's file saved as CSV. And when we're going to read the CSV file now, so we've checked if it exists there, but to actually read it, make sure you do import CSV up the top of your program. So we have to bring in a CSV file reading program from the Python library, just like we do import random to bring in the random number generating program. This one's import CSV to bring in the CSV reading program. And this is how we set it all up. So you need to comment out that debug where we did find the file okay. So just comment that out with those hash signs or pound signs or sharp signs or whatever you like to call them. And you need to add in all of this code here. Now what this code will do is that it'll set up that items array where we're going to load all of those things from the file into that 2-dimensional array. And this is how we read the CSV file, but we only do it if file found is true from the previous steps we were doing. And then that's all you have to do to get it all read in and put into the input items. Now that should say items array. Something is wrong there. That should be, this was items array, so that should be items array as well. Okay, so I'm going to have to fix that up, and in the PDF that'll be correct, but that should be items array, that should be items array as well, and then it should all work. Okay, so when you run the program, what you should see is a printout of everything that was in the file, which proves that it was loaded into the array correctly. All right then, on to version 3 of the program. Now version 3 shouldn't be that foreign to you either, because remember in the number guessing game, you should have been doing all of our course lessons in order to build up your skills gradually, because each program we do draws on the skills from the previous program, yeah, you should have already done something. Remember with the number guessing, they could pick whether they want the easy level, the medium level, or the hard level. So that's the kind of thing we're doing here, that delete these lines of codes that said the processing is not written yet, because we're going to write the processing right now in version 3 of the program. And the name of the subroutine def is user selects item category. So you add that in as a new line and get rid of these 2 print lines that are here. Now, what we need for the new user selects item category def is these prints where we can ask them to print in a single letter, enter a single letter just to make it a lot quicker for the data entry. And we have to have a loop that keeps spinning around, keeping them stuck there until they've chosen V, D, or N. Okay, so that was like what we did in the validation for the number guessing program. So if you're not sure of that, go back and check it. But that's the code you need to put in right there. And the following, then you need to delete these lines of code where we've got that debug printing out of all the items. Yeah, just delete all of that out because we don't need that big items list now. That was just a check to make sure that the items array was loaded. And I noticed there it's still got input items. Okay, so when you test your version 3 code, what should happen is quite a bit now. The price checker, do you want to do a price check? Yes. So if you enter F, which isn't V, D, or M, it's going to tell you invalid choice, type in one of the following letters. And then when you do D, we've just got a debug print there to tell us that yes, D is one of the valid choices. All right, so you need to have your program working so that it does this sort of validation, which is very important to trap user errors and get them to fix things up when they're wrong. And we've spoken about that in previous lessons. And we're ready for version 4. Now, version 4, we're going to give you some pseudocode here to help out with version 4. So version 4 is where we really get into it, and we're going to print out the price list. And so that user choice letter, V, D, or M, we need to put that into the full word category, which is actually in the array that came from the file. So that's pretty basic. Just if it's V, make it vegetables and have this user category choice. And then we're going to have a for next loop that's going to go the full length of the array up until the last item. And remember, the category is at that position 2 on the inner array. Remember, it's a third item, 0, 1, 2, so that 0, 1, 2, that's the category. So if the items array category that we're looking at equals the user choice one that they actually chose, well, then we're going to print it out. So if they chose dairy, this checking here should make sure that only dairy items get printed out when it goes through the whole 2-dimensional array of all the items. So that's kind of the pseudocode, and that needs to be converted into Python code for version 4. All right, so what it looks like when we do the Python code is, the first thing is where we've got them doing a valid choice, and we just said debug print that it's a good choice, we need to delete that out, and we need to have a new subroutine def name process user choice put in there instead. So delete the debug and put this one in instead. And also we have to fix a mistake. We finally found the mistake here where we've got the read CSV file into array. It's supposed to be items array here, not input items. And we'll try and fix that up back on those other slides as well. So that when you get this step-by-step document, it's actually going to be fully correct. Create the following. Now, this is a new def subroutine that's going to do everything. So that's how we translate that pseudocode into Python. If they've done V, D, or M, it's going to say vegetables, dairy, or meat. And here's how we go through the whole length of that 2-dimensional array. And we check out for each record we're doing, does the category in the record equal what the user chose? So if the user chose meat, does the category in the item record we're looking at equal meat? And if it does, then we can print out that meat item. All right, so that's kind of how we do it. They've chosen a category. We want to make sure we only pick items out of the row, out of the array, which match that category. So what should happen here is that when you run it, all my pages just won't go at the right spot where I want them. Oh, come on. All right, so the price checker, so here they had V, D, or M, they chose V for vegetables, so it has printed out, it tells them their price check was for vegetables, and it prints out all the vegetable items in our array. They want to do another one, they picked little m for meat, which is okay because we've got something to convert it to uppercase, and so we get all the meat items. And if they pick D for dairy over on this one where we ran it from the directly from the Windows folder executable, it does print out the 3 dairy items which we have in our input file and which got loaded into our 2D array and which Python has now extracted and printed out nice and neatly on our screen. So that is looking really good, and that basically completes our price checker program. However, and you know there's always a however, for a very large list of items, like in a real supermarket, we might not put the whole supermarket into one giant array. What we might do is be smart and split all the vegetables up into their own vegetables array, all the meat up into its own meat array, all the dairy into its own dairy array, all the cleaning products into their own cleaning products array, all of the, let's say, candies and lollies into their own array, all the tea and coffee into their own array. So we'd have all these categories and we put them all in a separate array, so we don't have to go through the giant array every time looking for things. Once we know it's vegetables, we can just go to the little special vegetables array and look at that one, and it'll make the processing a lot quicker and a lot better. And we actually need to learn how to do this so that we can do that quotable quotes challenge task. So just let you in on a secret, we're actually building the challenge task right now with version 5. But it's going to be the supermarket instead. So we're just going to reorganize all our programs. So we're going to have a new thing after we've read the CS file into the big array. We're going to have create separate categories array. So that's a new subdef. So in your main process up the top, create separate category arrays. All right. And what that is going to be is a new subdef that looks like this. And we're going to have some separate arrays set up. So we're going to the vegetables array, the dairy array, and the meat array. And we're just going to go through that whole big items array. And if we spot something that's category vegetables, we're going to put it into the vegetables array by appending it in. So dot append. If we find something that has a dairy category while we're going through that big array, put it into the dairy array, and if we find something that's meat, put it into the meat array. So that will split our big array of everything that we've read in from the CSV file into separate arrays for vegetables, another array for dairy, and another one for meat. All right, so we need that added in. All of this code kind of stays the same, but when we print out the items, so this is all the same, that if they've chosen V, we want vegetables. If it's D, it's dairy, and tell them what they've chosen. But this part here, you have to modify what's there at the moment and change that part so it looks like this. So if their user choice was vegetables, we're going to the vegetables array, okay? And we're printing out everything in the vegetables array. If they chose meat, for example, we're going to the meat array and we're printing out everything in the meat array, all right? So that's how that's going to work. That's how we're going to split it up into actual separate arrays by category, which is often something that's done in program. From one array, we make more arrays, or we just want to filter out part of something that's in a big array and have a little separate array of people's telephone numbers and their names, for example, or something like that. So that's a common sort of thing in lots of programming where we do that. And that should work exactly the same as version 4. All right, you shouldn't see any difference here on the output screens, but we've just changed the internal processing to be more efficient and work better is all we've done. Which brings us to challenge task quote of the day. The last thing, so remember you're going to have your input file of your favorite quotes and authors, and then ask people if they need an inspirational quote, and they can pick who they want the quote from, and it's going to give them the quote. So we've got the version 5 separate arrays program, and that's what you're going to need. You're going to have to put each quote, like all of Kanye's quote in the Kanye array, all of Jay-Z's quotes in the Jay-Z array. So all you have to do is take the version 5 code really and start modifying it so it's going to do this quote of the day. And here, for example, is a def main. We've just got print quote of the day instead of grocery check price list. We're still reading the file into an array the same as we were, but we're creating separate author arrays, okay? So the same way you split everything based on vegetables, dairy, and meat into its own little array, based on author, you'll split up the quotes into their own set of quotes just for that author. So you'll have the Kanye array, the Eminem array, the Jay-Z array, and split them all up. Now, when we get to printing out the quotes, we're not going to print out all of Kanye's quotes like we printed out all of the vegetable items. What you're going to do is use random numbers. So you need to go back to the homework excuser program. Instead of printing out all of them, what you need is to get it to pick a random index number from the Kanye array, for example, and just print out that random one Kanye quote. And we also don't have them asking for as many quotes as they like. So that while loop, if we have a look in here, notice it's just one quote of the day and that's it. So do you need an inspirational quote? Yes. And once they've got their quote, it doesn't ask them if they want to do another one. So you need to get rid of that while loop that gives them opportunities to keep asking and asking. And I think that's very easy. I think in fact you only remove about one line of code and then change the indenting of the other one. So look, from all the learning we've done, from the version 5 example we've given you, you should be able to do this challenge task, and that will really prove that you are now quite competent with Python programming and doing files, arrays, and all of our programming structures. All right, so just remember, we do have the Python programming course at PassyWorldOfICT.com Python, and there you can go and see all of the lessons as we showed you, and find the homework excuser lesson and look at that to find out how you randomly choose just one item from a given array. You can go back to the pets lesson and see how you actually just do basic arrays, and all the things you need to know previously are in those previous lessons, and it's all on this web page where the Python whole course is. All right, so thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this lesson. And remember that give this a big thumbs up like if it helped you, and I'm sure it will help you with your Python programming, and subscribe to our channel so that when there's a new video you get notified about it. And that's pretty much it from us, and we'll see you in the next lesson.